I'm Bob Fingerman, and I do the book Minimum Wage for Fantagraphics. It's an ongoing series about a group of young New Yorkers and their trials and tribulations and that kind of thing. It's basically an anti-Friends. You've got your friends, this is the anti-Friends. These are people who like each other but snipe at each other in, I think, a more realistic way. They go for the jugular and that kind of thing. There's also a lot more sex. And other than that, that's my regular ongoing thing, but there are future projects. Should I start talking about future projects? I'm going to be writing a series for Dark Horse Comics. They have a new series called Zombie World that I believe will be debuting this fall. The first one written by Mike Mignola and drawn by Pat McCune. It's going to be an ongoing series, creator-owned series, with the unifying element being zombie stories. Kind of Mignola and McCune's is going to be the beginning, and then by the end of it, I have a feeling there's going to be 2 or 3 living people left and just zombies everywhere. So I kind of fall somewhere in the middle of that. I'm going to be doing a series with Tommy Lee Edwards is the artist. I'll be writing it, and it's going to be the fall of New York City under the zombie plague. So it should be pretty interesting. And since, unlike movies, we don't have to worry about budget constraints, we can have as much mayhem and everything else as you could ever want in a zombie story. So, and there might be some humor, but I have a feeling for the people who read my work, it's going to be a little different. The influences on I guess on my approach for Zombie World would be the movies that have come before it. You know, all the George Romero, Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead and all of those. And actually, I've always loved zombie stories, so this is the very first thing that I plugged at Dark Horse was a couple of zombie miniseries. And this was, I guess, about 5 years ago, so it's like now the times have caught up with what I was pitching at them in the very beginning, so it's really exciting for me because I just think, for whatever reason, I don't know what it says about me, but I've always thought zombies were the coolest monsters. Maybe because they're so mindless, you know, there's nothing, nothing in what they do. Mignola, in his story, is going much more for the mystical approach to the zombies. It's got lots of wizards and, you know, incantations and what have you. And by the time I do my zombie story, I'm basically, I think, going to ignore all that and take it in my own direction where it's a little bit more treated as plague as opposed to any kind of mysticism, because I'm not really very interested in magical type stuff. I'd rather make it as, even though it's total fantasy, I'd rather make it as realistic as humanly possible, so the kind of thing that's just like the bubonic plague passed on from one person to the next person to the next person just by contact. And of course, the virtue of it being in New York is that we're all on top of each other there already, so I have a feeling it would be a pretty fast. It's basically the way I'm at least planning it out is to do 1 week, 1 business week in New York, where from Monday to Friday the whole city is just completely decimated. So, and there won't be any zombies in Minimum Wage, at least not for the foreseeable future. So, except for the ones I already had on the cover of the comic convention issue. So, we're going to be shooting a live action on basically self-financed, very small budget production of a live-action adaptation of one of the issues of Minimum Wage, and maybe by the time this airs, you know, I could actually give you some clips from it or something. That obviously would be a lot better than hearing me talk about it. But yeah, actually, we've cast all the leads, and they're great. We haven't actually started shooting. We're going to be doing that in late August, early September. But we're adapting I should say, my partner Alan Bazan and I, he's going to be doing all the technical stuff, all the lighting and what have you, because I have no expertise at all with that. But we're adapting the 5th issue, the one with the Bedelia Brunch character, the performance artist character, and the person we got to play Bedelia, she's amazing. I mean, really incredible. But yeah, we're shooting this live-action adaptation of Minimum Wage, and hopefully our goal with this thing is to shop it as a pilot, in essence. You know, I'd like to get this thing going as a TV series. I mean, ultimately, that would be the goal, to do a live-action show. I think I'm probably one of the only people who's drawing these comics who'd prefer live action to animation. But although, if anyone said, "Here's money, do animation," I probably would say okay. But I just think it would lend itself, since it's so ka-chunk grounded. Well, for one thing, since we're not paying anybody, I've pretty much chopped all the nudity and what have you out. There's only so much you can ask people to do that you're not paying, so. But it will be R-rated, at least in terms of language and content, you know. But I think it's adult in a more traditional sense of the word. It's not like adult because, ooh, it's dirty. It's just, you know, it deals with adult themes. Although Bedelia's monologues in it are probably amongst the filthiest things I've ever written. So in that regard, yeah, it's absolutely an R-rated, maybe even NC-17, but only for verbal, you know. People can get as upset at it or whatever they want. But I think it's funny, you know. The goal is to be entertaining. So I've written a script. I mean, what would you call it? A teleplay? Or it's not quite a screenplay. I guess it is a screenplay. I mean, in essence, it's a shooting script. But yeah, it's fairly freely adapted because that issue took place at Christmas time, and we don't want to shoot in the winter, so we've now changed it to end of the summer. So, so you lose, actually, if you take out something, it seems almost like maybe it's marginal if you're doing a Christmas story and you get rid of the Christmas part. Everything after that has to be changed. So it's been a pretty interesting process of adapting my own work. I can now see how when people have like read a book and see the movie and they say, oh, the book was so much better or so much different. I mean, if as much as I'm screwing around with my own work, I can only imagine, you know, going from a book to a feature film. Because at first I thought, it's a comic book, it's almost like just shoot it as written. And then you realize there's so many steps you've got to cut out or adapt or whatever. It's a weird process. We're going to be shooting this in New York, you know. I mean, that's where it takes place. So we'll be shooting, well, probably as little exteriors as possible since we're going to be doing this without permits. So lots of interiors, but that's good. It's a fairly interior-based story, so which is one of the reasons I chose adapting this issue, because there were other ones that I would have liked to have done just as much, but when you don't have a budget, you'll begin to think in terms of location, then you begin to think in terms of costuming, this, that, and the other thing. So this one lent itself to the most expedient adaptation. So, but yeah, we're just going to be shooting in New York, mostly Brooklyn, Queens, and a little bit in Manhattan. So, and it's a bigger cast than I would have thought too. It's like once you start really thinking about casting every speaking part, I guess there's about 15 speaking parts in this thing. So, it's a production. With the exception of one person, what we did was, I mean, I think it's pretty much like any other film. We placed an ad in Backstage, and we got about 500 headshots. I was stunned. I really was, especially any ad that says in big, bold letters, "No pay." And the fact that we got such a big response was great. And then the fact that from that response, we actually managed to find people we could use was amazing. I didn't know what to expect, because since this is a first outing for me, you know, I didn't know whether we'd get 10 headshots or no headshots. And I spoke with a couple of people who know actors, and they're like, "No, you're going to get flooded." And we definitely were flooded with stuff. So one reason we're doing this is doing the adaptation ourselves is I think you've kind of got to hold producers' hands a little bit, because the ability to visualize what's on the page and then take it that step further mentally, like what it would be like with actors actually doing this whole thing, I think it might be hard for some people to imagine. So we figure we'll just do it on our own nickel and see what happens. So I think it'll be good. You know, I think having this thing made and doing it professionally will do a lot towards, I think, legitimizing it, you know, and giving it that extra push when we start shopping it around. So I think that's about it.